Our show wouldn't exist without you listening. But if you want more information on how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or just to stay in touch, go to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there. All right, everybody, welcome back to Flipping the Lid. You know what we do here by now, and I am really excited about today. You know, I've talked often about how powerful my network has become, and it's really by being attached to so many unbelievably heart-centered entrepreneurs. And my good friend Steve Sims, who's already been on the show, made a couple of introductions. And when Steve says you need to know somebody, you don't really ask questions, at least in my experience. And what was really beautiful about this is we had already met a year before in a very brief exchange through Steve at that time as well. But when I met Jason, his presence was obvious. You meet certain people and you can just feel the depth and you can feel the energy, the vibration and the frequency that's just emitting from them. And that was my experience. And now that I get the opportunity to sit with him here, I'm actually probably going to read some very specific stats at some point, not in the intro. But this individual is so deep, has done so much work, and at a very early age of 8, was given a piece of wisdom that he transferred through his whole life, which was to listen between the notes of music. And in that gap, that void, there's so much that exists. And he's used his entire life and his whole purpose at this point, all of his teachings, all of his music. He's been Billboard top charts for Amazon and so many others multiple times. Unbelievably talented individual. But it's literally only to use music and his teachings to raise your vibrational frequency by doing the work of looking inside. So, Jason, I'm happy to have you here today, brother.
Brian, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And what a funny thing that we live 15 minutes away from each other.
That is so funny. And for those of you that don't know, we got introduced. We did meet in person in Arizona. Yeah. And typically, because we like to record here, we often are like, yeah, if you want to come meet in studio, great. It didn't happen for whatever reason that way. And I'm looking at your form yesterday and I realized you live like right around. I was like, bro, let's pivot. In person's always better.
Way better. Yeah.
We obviously haven't spent a lot of time together. We had some really good conversation today when you first got here. But, you know, I described who I believe you to be from how I've seen you and experienced you to date and the information I've been able to consume. But who are you in your words?
Well, I will go back to the story that you just started to tell. Next week, I celebrate my 53rd birthday. So this was when I was age 8, so that would have been 45 years ago.
Yeah.
I had a piano lesson, and my teacher said to me, never ever listen to the notes. Idiots listen to notes. Masters listen to the space in between. Because when you focus on the note, your mind gets cluttered and you hear nothing. When you listen to the space, your mind becomes clear and you hear everything. So my earliest lessons into music was gong, play a note, and then we'd listen to that dissolve into nothing. Gong, and just listen to that gap where it turns from something, a vibration, into nothing, and you place your attention there. Now, we had different words for it at the time. Deep listening was one, or just listening to the space, or just shut up and listen. Then later on in my teens, when I was formally trained in an ashram and we would sit and meditate for 4 hours, well, I realized that I had already been doing that. But the entry point was different.
Yeah.
So it was a form of, we didn't use the word meditation, but we got to the same place. And because sometimes when we think meditation, we just think, oh, okay, I have to sit on top of a mountain and wait a minute, I'm too busy to meditate. I have too many things to do. I'm running a company. I have a family, blah, 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 blah. I can't do it. Well, and from one viewpoint, from a time clock viewpoint, okay, fine. We can maybe make that case that you're so busy. But I don't like that word busy. When someone says to me, oh, you must be so busy, I say, no. Bees and beavers are busy. I'm present.
I switched my language years ago. I haven't said I'm busy for years. I say my life is very full.
Yeah.
Because it's all there by choice. And it raises my frequency because I'm not putting it to a low frequency energy like busy.
Bees and beavers.
Yeah.
Now, you might be scheduled. I have some days where I'm scheduled.
Yep.
Some days where it's not. But what's the difference? It's always you, you're always here, and it's always now.
Yeah.
So if I have 10 things beforehand, 10 things after, no things before, no things after, what's the difference? And so that's a little shift. And entrepreneurs get into the, oh, I'm so busy. And sometimes even wear it as a badge, which is a funny thing.
Yeah.
Like, why would you stir? I'm going to bounce around a little bit.
I love it.
But there's an old saying.
I'm tracing it all. So keep going.
I'm going to get back to the silence saying. But We talk about stirring and we talk about busy. Okay, we have consciousness. Consciousness sleeps in rocks and minerals, dreams in plants and flowers, stirs in animals and insects, and can awaken in humans. So a plant, a rock is still conscious. It's still alive, but it's sleeping. Or maybe a plant is like dreaming and a rock sleeps, and an animal can stir like that. Well, don't stir. Don't be an animal. Be present. But back to the meditation. And so there's many paths up the mountain. You can call meditation, call it stillness, call it whatever you want. So later on in my teens, I asked my martial art instructor, I said, what is Zen? And he stared at me, looked at me, smiled, and then sidekicked me. And he hit me hard. As a teenager, I deserved it in some way. Okay.
I just have a visual of this, and I love every bit of it because I can see. No, you just got sidekicked.
Yeah.
Asking a question. It's actually a good question.
And in that moment, I went flying across the dojo. I hit the end. I was in a daze and everything. He just smiled at me and walked off. He said nothing. And if you think about it, in that moment, I experienced Zen.
Yeah.
There was no past. There was no future. I even had a word for it, or whatever my word was. So he gave me the experience of Zen without using any words. Now, that was at the time. Now, this was in the 80s. Maybe we're in a different time period. Back then, you did that. And that was a more powerful teaching than a verbal description. Oh, Zen is having no thinking, and the incessant stream, the incessant stream of thinking goes blah, blah, blah. Then you stop it for a split second, and in that gap and in that space, you experience Zen. Well, that would not have vibrated in the same way.
Right.
I still wouldn't be talking about that story.
Right.
If I got a verbal explanation than if I got a sidekick.
That's right. There's so much beauty in all of what you just outlined, and you embedded so much wisdom in there. The space between the note is powerful, and how you loop it into presence and the lesson is real. I've got a few things that are coming to me that I want to ask, but the very most relevant one is the last part of what you said is the physical resonance of the lesson. Because what I've found in my own life is until I started to be able to actually understand how to let go, how to surrender, right? Meditation has been movement for me in lots of cases. Some of my deepest flow states are when I'm on a bike or when I'm right. And so for me, there's lots of ways that it moves. But what I'm really curious about for me is almost all of my most profound lessons required a physical impact for my consciousness, my mind, my heart to slow down long enough to pay attention. Can you talk about how you learned to be able to access between the notes and this presence?
Yeah.
And what role does the physical body play in integrating the process effectively?
Okay, that's great. Do you have the book I just gave you?
Yeah.
We have this copy. Okay, so check this out.
It's even better then.
Here, and I'll put it up to the screen here. I got it right there.
Yep.
The back of the book, there's those three characters.
Okay.
And the three characters, the meaning, it says, it's called the three treasures.
Okay.
If you Google the three treasures, you'll get thousands of pages once you get past Pirates of the Caribbean.
Okay.
You will get this. And it's called Jing, Qi, and Shan. Not necessarily remember the word, but let's remember the meaning.
Okay.
We're made up of three things: matter, energy, and consciousness. And so the matter is everything you can see, touch, and feel. The energy is, there's a lot of words for it. The bioelectrical energy, the ki, the chi, the prana. We can say the breath. We can say emotion. Because emotion, you can't hold emotion in your hand. It's
all energy.
But it does exist. It is energy. And the shun is the consciousness. We can say that's the thought. You can say that's the eternal I am. A simple metaphor is if we have H2O, we have solid, liquid, vapor, ice, water, and mist. It's all H2O, but it shows up different ways. And so when you talk about physical movement meditation, see, there's actually three types of meditation. There's sitting, standing, and moving. And so there is a moving meditation, and there's a lot you can do in moving meditation. And sometimes it's much easier to get into a meditative state through moving than through stillness. What I find with entrepreneurs, see, when I was teaching meditation 25 years ago, we would say, okay, meditate 40 minutes at night, 40 minutes in the morning. And everyone would say, okay, and would do it. Well, let's tell everyone that now and see, okay, I'll get right on that as they slowly back off.
Yeah.
So the meditation can be hard, especially for an entrepreneur. We can get into entrepreneurial brain. It's a lot of times it's all types of thoughts, and we have 50 to 80,000 thoughts a day, 99% of the same thoughts we had yesterday. And the lowest sometimes if I teach that or we start with meditation, it's not the best way to start with an entrepreneur, because you'll be sitting there and the mind will start running. Oh, I have all this stuff I have to do. I have to pick up my kids at 4 and I have this thing and I have this email. And it becomes stressful. So it flips. It becomes the opposite of its meaning. And then you quit and you think, oh, I just failed at meditation, or meditation is stupid, it sucks, or whatever. So I say, no. Don't start with that most of the time for most people. Usually we start with breath work. Mm-hmm. And the breath work is the lowest hanging fruit, because you start pumping oxygen and pumping the breath and then holding the in-breath, holding the out-breath, and there's all types of things. I mean, I have a breath mastery for entrepreneur training program that we do, and we meet 4 mornings a week and we go through a really intense breath work, and you get put in the now.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, at one point we activate the lizard brain of the, oh my God, what are you doing to me? How are we, oh my God, you're going to die. No one dies, at least not too often in my program. I keep the death to a minimum.
Good.
Just kidding. I feel like I had to say that.
I totally understand why you had to say that, even though I thought it was heavily implied. But yeah.
But we put you, and that brings you into the now, and it supercharges your energy. It drops the mental turbidity. You purge unwanted stress, unwanted toxins and stuff. So it's a form of meditation that's much easier to access in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Once you have mastery of it, and once you practice it, can you sit and turn the incessant stream of thinking off? Yes. And that's a skill set and that's a muscle, but that's hard to start. I was once asked, this was a few years ago, I was teaching at an event, and this woman came up to me. She was a doctor, really, really smart. Like on a scale of 1 to 10, you just look at her and she's a 50 in terms of, and she was also a doctor and an entrepreneur. What a combination. And she was talking a mile a minute of, and now I'm doing this. Like you could see her brain, just firing in all cylinders. And she said something real interesting. She says, look, when I meditate, I go to the place of nothing and I don't want to do anything. But then as an entrepreneur, I want to do everything. I want to do a lot of stuff. I don't like it myself when I get to this point. And first of all, I didn't believe her. She did not have the ability to stop her mind, but I smiled. And she says, so I'm in conflict. I want to meditate here, but I want to be active. And I said to her, you're 90 degrees off. She goes, what do you mean? I said, you're looking at it this way. You have to flip it 90 degrees, and you have activity on the top and stillness underneath. Mm-hmm. Then you can move as fast as you want. You can do a lot of different projects. I have a lot of entrepreneurial projects. We bought a town last year. I don't know if you even know that story.
I want to hear the story, because
in addition to all the music, and I'm running ELF coaching with the Easy Lucrative Fun coaching with Joe Polish and the Genius Network. I just took that on, and I have my Zen Wellness, I have my Zen Piano. I do a new album every month. I mean, so I have a tremendous amount of activity, and I love it. I'm not dead yet, so I'm going to be very active. Yep. And however, the magic is when you can put the stillness underneath. Yeah. So meditation doesn't mean tapping out and not doing anything and retreating out into the mountain. It can, if that's what you're called to do it, but doesn't have to be that.
Yeah, and I think so many people can access it so many different ways. And I know that I identify deeply with a lot of what you talked about because of my story, my past, my trauma. I mean, I lived existing in the doing with zero ability to be. And in the beginning stages of trying to sit in stillness, I couldn't sit for 5 minutes. Couldn't even sit for 2.
Yeah.
Like if I could get past a minute, it would be a victory, right? And I ultimately started to get beyond that. Now I'm further advanced and have done a lot with sensory deprivation tanks, and I can typically shut down my brain often when I want to, and I can download and I can surrender. I still have work to do. I'm still meditating. I'm still growing. But it was literally less than 10 years ago that I couldn't sit still at all.
Yeah.
And now I seek stillness. And I mean, I've got words on my arm to remind me in moments when I feel myself starting to, as you called, twitch as the animal. to just honestly breathe. And I've said for a long time that it is the most accessible tool, and it's the only organ that keeps us alive that we can't live without, that will work with us or we can control. That's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we were given the ability to control our breath, to time it, to cadence it, the depth of it, all of it. So I appreciate that. I want to ask the question in a slightly different way. Rather than movement as meditation, part of my lessons also came through and were forced only through a physical pain experience that then caused me to go inward.
Yeah.
And so that, in all the healing that you do and all the work that you do with individuals, I find that a physical trauma, in some cases, shocks people immediately into it.
Yeah.
Emotional traumas can be significantly harder to unpack, but the body typically heals the fastest. And so we often pay attention to it and process through it. Can you give me a little bit of perspective on your experience of healing from those modalities that you talked about, with the physical body being a representation of who we are in this man-made constructed world, right?
If you look historically, the sages, where enlightenment or ascension would come from, it would come from loss and not gain.
Yes.
Do you remember the movie Groundhog Day?
I do.
Okay, there's a wonderful Taoist teaching in Groundhog Day. And aside, when you get past the humor, it was a funny movie, and I haven't seen it in years. So where the ultimate teaching was resistance.
Okay.
Bill Murray's character was funny and everything was stupid and everyone else was an idiot. And so he was in a form of resistance. Mm-hmm. So he started to repeat the karmic pattern. Mm-hmm. And in the movie, it was literally the same day, but that's just a metaphor.
Right.
So you get in these karmic loops or these pattern loops where you repeat through resistance. Mm-hmm. The third act of the movie, he said something to the effect of, okay, this moment is enough. And when he said this moment is enough, it was the flip. And the flip, then everything he touched grew. Everything he touched ascended. Now, the teachings of the cross. If you wear a cross, well, the teaching is, why have you forsaken me? To not my will, thy will be done. Mm-hmm. So we go from resistance to allowing.
Yep.
And sometimes in the yoga community, we use the word surrender. Mm-hmm. You surrender, but what do you surrender to? You surrender to the now. Now, when I teach in the martial art community, I don't use the word surrender. The martial artists don't like it.
It's a different
or
modality.
Like the military community. No. I will use a different word. And who cares? The words are just words. So use whatever word works for you. That's all that matters. Mm-hmm. And I use the word allow. Mm-hmm. And what do you have to allow? Well, there's only one thing you have to allow. You just have to allow this moment. Mm. That's it. And there is a word called mindfulness. We've all heard the word mindfulness. Yep. And we do mindfulness. Okay, that's actually the worst word in the world to use. And here, I thought for years that was actually like this evil Buddhist priest or this evil Taoist priest tricking everyone with mindfulness. Because if you think about it, it's not mindful. Right. Who wants to have, let's put more things in your mind. Yeah, that's what I do.
It's hurtful.
It's the opposite. Yeah. You need mind
empty.
Okay, but when we think, no mind empty, that's we think of that as like stupid or low intelligence. Yeah. So I did some research on it, and where it came from in around 1910 or so, this Buddhist scholar, I think it was T.W. Davis, translated the word sati, which is a Sanskrit word. Mm-hmm. And probably a better translation would be awareness. Mm. But he just did mindfulness. It was 1910. You can't believe the guy. I mean, blessings to him for doing all this translation back then.
Right.
But then it just caught on. And if you look at so much of our world is upside down.
Oh, I completely agree with you.
And that's one of the things. And here's the other trick. Again, evil Buddhist priests, right, trying to trick everyone to say, I need to work on being more mindful. Mm-hmm. Everything about that statement is backwards. It's like it moves you farther away from your goal, because presence is not something you can work on. Mm-mm. It's only something you can remember. And so it's remembering. And there's only one time that you can remember to be present.
It's in the present.
Now.
Right.
I'm going to work on being present tomorrow. Yeah. That's the monkey mind trying to trick you. and pulling you away. See, the monkey mind is our best friend and our worst enemy. See, we need the monkey mind to solve crossword puzzles and build bombs and do marketing funnels and figure out your cash flow and do organizational charts and go shopping. I mean, we have to be very practical. Yet at the same time, what I started to reference earlier, we have between 50,000 and 80,000 thoughts a day, and 99% of them are the same thoughts we had yesterday. So we get into this loop, skip record. So most of our thoughts we don't need. And so part of mastery and self-mastery is, can you lessen your thoughts or can you turn it off? And that's when we get into ultimately meditation, is turning it off. And then so someone says to me, like in one of like in the Breath Mastery for Entrepreneur program, well, I had a few seconds of turning it off. I had, that, but then it just came right back on, and it came back right on right when I realized that I wasn't thinking, and is that okay? And first of all, the answer is, of course.
It's always okay.
But 1 second, 1 hour, 1 year, what's the difference? It's now. And that's just a muscle that you build and have the ability to turn it off. See, okay, there's an old Taoist riddle, and here's the riddle. What's the closest number to infinity? And the answer is, of course, 0.
Yeah, it's got to be.
It has to be 0.
Has to be.
Yeah. And if you go to the yin-yang symbol, do we have it in here? There's a yin-yang symbol somewhere in the book, but everyone knows what a yin-yang symbol.
I have one on my arm somewhere. No, it's on my chest, but I don't have the yin-yang on my arm.
Okay.
Oh, well.
There's the little dollop of black and white, the little dollop. Okay, there's the profound teaching in the dollop. And it's when something goes to one extreme, it flips. For example, something so cold it burns you. What? It's so cold, but how can it burn? Because it's extreme. Or we live out here in the desert, so it's in the middle of July. It's so hot, it's so young, you want to fall asleep. Or it's a full moon. It's 2 a.m, and it's so still, but you're just wide awake. It's so yin, you become yang. I forget who it was, maybe Benjamin Franklin or someone said, when you're prone to excess, you're better off with abstinence. And so
that's a really good line.
Yeah. If you can't do 2 shots of tequila, if you have to do 20 shots of tequila, then you're probably better off with 0 shots of tequila. But if you can do 2, then or whatever, then that's okay. So there's a lot that's the 2 extremes, because excess and abstinence vibrate the same. So the 2 extremes, the dollops vibrate the same. That's why we can do it's like a wormhole almost from something's one extreme to the other extreme.
Well, so it makes complete sense. And honestly, in a lot of the work that can exist in our world about getting people to neutral and diffused and connected and aligned and actually understanding the balance and integration of their intellectual and emotional narratives is often about centering in the now, because it's the only thing that's real and the only thing that's true. And I really believe and resonate so much with the way you describe stuff, because you have a different level of depth, and the perspective and words that flow out of you are really powerful. I love even what you said in the fighting versus surrender, and it connects even to the original opening point. I believe that whenever we are fighting, and again, in martial arts and physical combat, I'm not meaning it in that case, I'm meaning in the purpose of life. Fighting forces aside. You're protecting a belief, you're protecting yourself, some existence, some unconscious trash from your past that causes you to feel certain ways in moments of reaction and trigger that don't align with your own existence, but you still are experiencing as real, right? Like, we can fight, but when we're fighting against each other, it forces a black and a white, and the gift is in the gray area, just like all the depth is between the notes. And that happens in surrender. Right? Surrender, I imagine like this pendulum swinging one side. When you fight, it forces it to one side or the other. Right? The pendulum allows it to freely flow and often fall directly in the center. You've done a lot of work, but it started at age 8. You heard this profound comment at 8, and you remember it, you can recall it, you can tell the story. Did you appreciate the depth of it in that time?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So
just another lesson.
So that's what I want to close the gap for, is take us from age 8 to this next phase of your life. When did presence, when did enlightenment, when did meditation, when did this connectedness that you operate with start to develop? And when did you become aware of the gap between your conscious self and your physical self?
Okay, so there's a lot here. And to what you were saying about fighting.
Yes.
So if you look at a superhero,
Yeah.
a superhero can only exist with a supervillain.
Correct. It's always in contrast.
What do you call a superhero without a supervillain? Now, one way is to say unemployed. The other answer is a weirdo in tights.
Someone who likes to dress up.
So it needs its opposite.
It does.
And so it needs that. And we can say, it's a funny thing, because when you create opposition, you almost, in one way, well, okay, so I'll use this. There's a few different examples of this. We look at disease. Now, we can have a war on cancer. Okay. And we can say we're good and cancer is bad. And okay, that's one viewpoint. Or we can say a germ and let's just go easy. Let's say a common cold.
Okay.
So germs and disease. We all understand that. Well, germs are bad and I'm good. Okay, one viewpoint. Well, What if we looked at it from a different viewpoint? What if we looked at it from universal viewpoint or God viewpoint? And we said a germ and a disease is a life form. Okay, it's alive. And from God viewpoint, it has a right to exist. Exist is just Latin. It means to stand out. You stand out of what? To stand out from nothing. So you and I have a right to exist. But this germ and this disease also has a right to exist. Okay. Now, doesn't mean you have a right to exist inside of me, though. You don't let all of your friends into your bedroom.
Right.
So we say, you're trying to get inside of me, and that forces me to have an immune system.
Yep.
If it wasn't for you trying to bust in, I wouldn't have border security here. Okay, and if I didn't have an immune system, I wouldn't exist.
Right.
So from one funny viewpoint, it's like, wow, you actually make me exist from one viewpoint. So if we take that a step further, you're actually my best friend.
Yeah.
So there's no, again, you don't let all your best friends in your bedroom. No, you can't exist in here. I'm going to build up my immune system through a whole protocol. We're talking about cold baths, and that's one part for the immune system, and breath work, and moving, and stopping your mind, and nutrition. There's a whole wellness program. And we're going to do that so that you can say over here, and the word here is the punchline is peacefully coexist. Can you peacefully coexist? And that drops that warring. I need to go to war. I need to have opposition. Now, opposition for a challenge and to make you better. I mean, there's a lot of times that can be a good thing. Like a competition can be your best friend or your worst enemy. It's how you use it. You know what it's like? Okay, you take a room of entrepreneurs, and most of entrepreneurs have a lot of determination. Yeah. Very few entrepreneurs just aren't naturally determined. And actually, a little side note, where we hold determination, the part of our body where that exists is in our kidneys. Our kidneys and our bladder, and it's a water element if we look at it from a 5-element viewpoint. But now, if I went to all of the spouses or significant others of everyone that says they're so determined, or somebody close to them, I said, hey, do they got a stubborn streak in them? Is there a little bit of stubbornness? Most of the time, we get a yes. So we say, well, what's the difference then between determined and stubborn? Well, before we look at the difference, let's look at what do they have in common: an abundance of will. Yeah. Okay, when you're determined, you own your will. When you're stubborn, your will owns you. Yeah. So it's just ownership. So you get you take a kid, this kid is so stubborn and everything. Okay, awesome. They got willpower. You're not going to stop the willpower. Let's just own it. Yeah. Let's do something with it here. And that's why I say this a lot to parents as well. I really, really encourage, if your kid can do martial arts or something, I like martial art, but it doesn't matter what the tool is. Teach your kids how to be masters. Correct. Because the hardest skill set to master is the first skill set you master, because you're simultaneously learning mastery and the skill set. I mean, it can be, if you're not prone to martial arts, it doesn't matter. It can be chess club.
It doesn't matter what it is. Yes.
That's just the tool. It doesn't matter. But learn mastery. Because once you master mastery, then anything you put your attention on, you understand mastery, and then you can be very methodical. And then over the course of a lifetime, over the course of a career, you can have a lot of different skill sets.
Yeah.
You can't master everything, but you can master a lot. And especially as you get older and older, as that builds momentum, you can quickly bring in information, and what you focus on, you can get really, really good at it.
And you can shorten the time and consume more and bend and manipulate time. And that's what I've learned in the power of the present, is you actually have more freedom and more escape simultaneously in the moment than you do anywhere else in the world.
Boy, it just opens up a whole can of worm of bending time and how we
Yeah, and I know we aren't going to be able to go there and get into all of that. But, what I do really appreciate in all of what you talk about, it's perspective, it's contrast, it's depth, it's understanding. It's again, even the nuance of language between protection and ownership. We talk about helping people identify and take out the trash from their past that shows up as their biggest problems in life, business, relationships, and health. But guess what? The same moments that form the trash, and the trash itself and the trash pressure forms all of the treasure. They come from the same moments. Yeah. And so you just said that so beautifully. Help me understand the darkest moments of contrast for you in your life, and how you learned to bring yourself back to center and integrate yourself.
Okay. Well, see, there's always a dark side.
Yeah.
And where there's light, there's darkness. And anyone who, oh, no, everything's perfect. Oh, my business is perfect. Oh, my world is perfect. Real. Well, you're either lying or delusional.
Yeah.
Or both.
It's the truth. And nothing is perfect.
Well,
except timing. It always happens.
That's right. Well, we can get into a whole discussion about the word perfect. But everything has a dark side, and it has to be that way. Because sometimes we say, oh, you've heard the saying, money is the root of all evil. Mm-hmm. Well, that's very naive.
Yeah.
It's okay, great. But then sometimes if you're trying to sell a course in abundance, he'll say, no, money is not the root of all evil. Scarcity is the root of all evil. No, wrong. I mean, that's okay. So you can make a case, and scarcity is a problem, and perhaps you can make the argument that scarcity creates evil. Fine, but it's not the root.
Correct.
Okay, and what is the true root of all evil? Drum roll. Good is the root. Because the moment you have, back to the yin-yang symbol, the moment you have good, then it creates evil. And then sometimes you say, wait a minute. See, then we can get into like a religious conversation. You say, no, that's not true, because God is good and God has no opposite. And now you're saying, I've been accused in the past of saying, years ago, that God and the devil are equal by saying that. And it's that, and that's wrong. And it's saying, no, that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's not what you're saying.
That's not what I'm saying at all. Because I'll say the exact same thing with different words. The opposite of death is not life. The opposite of death is birth, because life has no opposite.
Correct.
And so birth, death, birth, death, birth, death, life is what's underneath. Mm-hmm. And so we have good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And then we can say divinity, or we can say whatever it is that goes underneath. And so everything has, like, let's say a dark side, mm-hmm. And so, do I deal with a dark side? Of course. And you can say all the things pulling you off center, because everything, especially as an entrepreneur, we have all these things pulling you off center. And to what you said, it's easy to take an oppositional viewpoint of that. Oh, this is now pulling me. Oh, I got this phone call. Oh, my assistant's, my assistant's an imbecile, and oh, they don't know what they're doing, and all this. Okay, maybe. But if you were never pulled off center, there couldn't be a center. So being pulled off center actually creates a center.
Yes. So
again, it's the judo flip. It's like, wow, wait a minute. Being pulled off center is actually my best friend, because without it, I wouldn't be centered.
Yeah.
And so that's just, there's a flip that you can make with all of this. Mm-hmm. And so then the muscle becomes, and the mastery is, how quickly can you recover?
Bingo.
How quickly can you move back into center? Because you get thrown off center. I get thrown off center.
We all do.
Of course I do. And so you get thrown off, and then bring back.
I used to spend months and years off center. Now it's minutes and moments. And that's the goal, and that's the best I think anybody can accomplish.
Okay, that's what you just said is very profound. Minutes and moments.
That's it. Because I experience resistance and I center back to truth.
Yeah.
And I've learned now to do that through a variety of different ways. And we teach that. But that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
Is, again, how do you go back to center if you don't even know where it is or what it feels like or what it looks like or even how to do it?
By being pulled off.
Right. Exactly.
When I was a teenager, my aunt and uncle are professional artists.
Okay.
So this big art studio. I never showed skill with a pen or with a brush or anything. I never had, even to this day, I just don't have any aptitude.
Creative in other ways.
Totally. It was never I could do
just
a sword.
Wasn't your medium.
A sword, but not a
wasn't your
brush
medium.
for some reason. My points never went to the horizon. I always missed the horizon. So I didn't get that. However, I would go to his studio and he would teach me art, and then I would translate it into music. I would I could take that. I could translate it into sound, like as a kid. And this one time, there's this big giant mural, and there was this flowing grass on the bottom. He says, "Jason, come over here. Look at that grass right there. What do you see?" I said, "Grass." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Look closely. What do you see?" I said, "Green." "Come on, look closely. What do you see?" "Jade." "Really? Look closely." I'm trying to get tricky. Okay. Movement. I see movement and flows. No. I was like, no. I didn't get the answer. And finally, he gave me the answer, what he was looking for. And he said, the absence of red. Lightning bolt. Hit me. So if I take all the colors, well, we got 3 primaries.
Because green and red are opposites, right?
Pull the red out. You're left with green.
Yeah.
Okay, Siddhartha, the first Buddha. His mom called him Siddhartha, right? Everyone else called him Buddha. Was asked, what is enlightenment? And the answer he gave was the removal of suffering. So isn't that interesting?
Jason, I love you, brother. Do you know that the Latin root to the word suffer means to carry?
To carry, it makes sense.
And, it's interesting because one of our core philosophies is embracing pain to avoid suffering, because I think that's where we also gain freedom.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that, we can
talk for a long time.
Define all of that and everything that's there. But that's also what we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as we can by reducing the level of internal suffering that exists on this planet, of which I think largely dictates all the suffering that exists.
Yeah.
It's all of what we're experiencing in here. And suffering is truly what most people experience until they find a way to move.
And you can, so it's like, I take anyone, I take you and I reach in, I just
Bingo.
Pull out all the suffering. What's left? Enlightenment.
Yeah.
I take all the colors that exist. I pull out
right.
the red. What's left?
That's right.
Is green. Now, if you look at suffering, we say, okay, what does suffering mean? You can generally trace suffering to attachment, resistance, and judgment. At some level of the core, all paths lead to Rome, one of those 3. Mm-hmm. Are you attaching to your stuff or to your story? Ooh, very easy to attach to a story. Are you resisting? Resisting what? The now. That's how you resist. Or judging. Not to be confused with discerning.
Yeah.
It's a real subtle.
Actual judgment, judging. Yes.
Yeah.
Non-objective.
That's right.
Yep.
It is what it is.
Yep.
Which is another way of saying shutting up the asshole in the head. That's one way of saying it. We all have an asshole that lives in our head that judges, attaches, and resists. But that's not a bad thing. It's what it's meant to do. It's programming.
I actually really appreciate those 3 buckets. It's interesting. I describe suffering different. Internal suffering for me. And then, by the way, I completely agree with all that. Like, I haven't heard it described that way before, so I really receive that. I often say that I think the roots of most internal suffering come from 4 places. Things that are left unsaid, the things we lack permission to feel or say, the things we lack the words to articulate or understand, or the things that are left undone. It's the stuff that we keep bottled up, that we don't remove the suffering on. Yeah. We don't identify and remove the things that aren't serving us so that we can move to enlightenment, as you call it. But what's interesting is that's why I believe, my purpose in life is to allow my truth to give others permission to live theirs. Every time you tell your story, every time you talk, every time you give examples, people are getting words to feel and have permission for the first time to feel things that maybe they haven't had otherwise before.
Yeah.
And you're giving them words and understanding to articulate their own situation that they may or may not even been conscious to, which then puts them in a position to reason and act and do to create the movement in their life to separate. All of what you said, though, I 1,000% agree with.
Yeah.
Those are all those areas. It's judgment, resistance, and what was the third one? Attachment. Yeah. It's all in the power of detachment and letting go as well. I think that's beautiful.
Well, and there's a very old metaphor of you say, what is truth? Okay, so truth. We'll ask 5 blind men to describe an elephant. Everyone is going to say something very different.
It'll all be true to them.
And they're all describing truth. Truth is the elephant, and they're all describing it. So there's many ways and words, because if you think of the limitation of words, we have 5 vowels and compressed air. F, t, sh. And so we're combining these 5 vowels, the little mystery 6th one, and compression, and we're trying to convey these very complex ideas. There's this symbol right here. We put it in the front of our book, and you can see right here, it's the Tao symbol, T-A-O, sometimes spelled D-A-O symbol. And Lao Tzu, about 2,500 years ago, wrote this book called the Tao Te Ching. It wasn't a book, it was just 81 passages. And the first passage, he describes Tao. We can use the word God for Tao if we want to use that. We can say universal intelligence. But here's the profound thing that he says. And actually, if you read the Tao Te Ching, all you need to understand is the first chapter of the 81. Then if you understand this, you'll get the rest of the 80s. Right. You don't even need to read it, but it is a fun read. He says, okay, I'm going to really paraphrase here. There is the finite and the infinite. Our minds are finite. God is infinite.
Yep.
The finite can't understand the infinite. We can point to it. We can feel it. We can experience it, but don't ever think you can understand it.
I agree.
It's futile to understand it. So we're going to use a word, but know that once we use a word for God, the word is wrong.
Right.
Because we're compressing we're taking something that we can't understand into
Completely.
5 vowels in compressed air.
Completely.
So he says the word we're going to use, or the symbol we're going to use, we'll call it Tao.
Okay.
But it's wrong. And everything we talk about God is wrong because we're talking about it.
Because we truly don't understand it.
Because we're talking. And then he goes on to talk about it. But he gives the disclaimer in the beginning that it's all wrong. Because words can't do it. But can you tap into God? Of course. Can you feel God? And looking for God is like a fish looking for water. The moment you can't find it if you look for it.
Well, it's the whole freaking point of everything we're talking about. It all comes back to the same center point, right? Because it's as soon as you let it go, detach, and surrender, that everything you desire attracts to you. Yeah. Right? And we just had on our community call this morning, we had conversations around, are you attracting and amplifying? Or and I can't even remember the word that I use now, or are you chasing and constricting? And it was just something that those 4 words came to me this morning, like 5 minutes before the call, and we dropped it on the call. But it's again, every time I chase something, attach to something, do something that I believe is going to bring me closer to whatever controlled outcome I'm trying to work towards, right? Like, it seems that I'm taking myself further away from it.
There's a saying, tiger doesn't hunt. Tiger waits.
Exactly.
Because tiger knows everything tiger needs eventually walks in front of tiger.
Yeah.
But tiger needs to know what tiger needs, so tiger can pounce. When it walks. And you speak about vibration and attraction. Okay, if I take a guitar, an acoustic guitar, and I just hold the acoustic guitar in my hand and I sing a note, which is about 220 beats per second, like an A.
Okay.
Or actually, I think it's 110. But if I hit that note, I can vibrate the string without touching the string. So you can activate the string through sound in doing
Makes sense.
Okay, so it's like a tuning fork. If I have 2 tuning forks, I hit one tuning fork, ding. If the other one's tuned in the same way,
it'll start.
It starts to activate. If I take my finger, which explains basically the law of attraction, because if I take my finger and I move it 20 times per second, I can't move it that fast, up to 20,000 times per second, you and I will perceive that vibration as sound. If I do it 200,000 times per second, we will perceive that vibration as light. And so we have this range. Now, you have 5 dogs. Okay, if I vibrate my finger 40,000 times per second, you and I won't hear anything, but the dogs will. Oh, if I vibrate my finger 7 times per second, you and I won't hear anything, but an elephant will. You probably don't have any pet elephants here.
No, I don't have a pet elephant.
But they will hear that. And it's even like plants communicate to each other. They communicate in a higher, I don't remember what the range was, but in a higher range. So then we go back to remember the old saying, when a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear, it doesn't make a sound. The answer is no. Absolutely does not make a sound. It makes a wave.
Yeah.
It only turns into a sound if there's someone or a surrogate, a recording device, to translate that into sound.
Interesting.
So thoughts are also vibrations.
Yep.
And so when you have a vibration of a thought, it is going to tend to attract other thoughts with the same vibration. One of the projects I'm doing right now, I'm in the midst of, I was asked to write the music for the Vatican NFT launch.
Okay, so you know Lee.
Yes, of course.
I just talked to Lee yesterday.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. She's an incredible human being.
She's a rock star. You should have her on your podcast.
Yeah, she will be.
Okay, would be a great guest. And so, okay, so what an interesting project. And my answer was, let me think about that. Yes!
Yeah, I mean, it's such an incredible project,
well,
all of it.
And I've been studying this since I was a child.
Really?
I've been staring at I've been studying this chapel and all this. It was, okay, I can definitely do this. And then, we have the 9 stations of it. And if you look at the 9 stations, I mean, it's really profound, because the first station is God divides heaven and light. Or light and darkness.
Okay.
Okay, you have yin and yang. Think. And then the second one is creates the planes, the sun, the moon, and the earth is the second one. We can think of that as the 3 treasures. That's a longer conversation for another time. And then the other one is then divides the land. The number 3 is divide the land and the water. That's when the 5 elements show up. And then on the 4th one is this is the most famous one, the touching of the Michelangelo. And that's when the chi, the prana, the Holy Ghost actually shows up. And by the way, I said matter, energy, consciousness. The Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost is the exact same teaching. Yep. The Father is the Spirit. The Son is the matter, and then the Holy Ghost is the chi, the energy that runs through it. So many wise figures have come up with the exact same thing over so many years.
Universal truth, though.
Yeah.
Like, that's the reality. Like, whether you communicated one way, I communicated another way, 15 other people communicated a different way, the reality of it is it often is the same universal truth, just communicated with whatever access to words and understanding we all have at any present moment in our life. That's right. And to your point exactly, even as it relates to like what we can receive in the infinite and the non-infinite, we also cannot typically consume a vibration or frequency that's beyond what we've reached in our own life. And so we also need multiple people without a model or someone who can all of a sudden reach us there. So when we look at this across the measure of people, what I'm curious about is, at what point do you see most people starting to actually transfer? When do you see them starting to wake up? And what thresholds in their life? You said it was around loss and other pieces that typically create the contrast. But you communicate something to a group of people that's going to be able to receive it from you who might not ever receive the same message from me, or vice versa. Right. Or any number of other people, right? Which is why I believe in collective impact and collective consciousness, because it requires all of us. So how does the lay person who doesn't have access or knowledge around meditation beyond what they've listened to today, who know how to be, who feel like they wake up most days in resistance and strain and interference and can't seem to escape it, what's the access point for the masses?
What's the entry point? Well, it's so cliche, the old saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. It's so cliche.
Always true.
But it's always true. Mm-hmm. And it has nothing to do with the teacher. It has to do with you and your mind. Yes. Something is opening. And if you're listening to this now, if you found your way into this conversation, well, there's probably a crack that's starting to open. And you can't unring that bell once, like, you start to see that we are not just our stuff. Or not just our form. We can call it the illusion of form. Or the illusion that if I can't see it, it doesn't exist. Well, okay, well, science kind of actually already tells us some of that, but or that we are actually more than not just of our bodies, but we're also more than our stuff. Okay, so for example, we do this in emotional mastery. You say, I'm angry. Mm-hmm. Okay, so from one viewpoint, you're angry, but let's look at it from another viewpoint. Let's say, well, are you angry? You're not really angry. You're actually a little dollop of consciousness that gets this strange lease agreement on this big bag of meat, flesh, levers, pulleys, and a circuit board, called a body.
Yeah.
So it's a weird relationship we have because it's a lease. At some point we have to give it back. We don't know the expiration date. We didn't get a manual. It has this weird growth curve. I mean, it's a really funny thing when you think of it.
It is.
But we're this little dollop of consciousness that's in it. Okay, so you're not angry. You might have anger energy running through you. So if you flip from I am angry to I have anger energy running through me, or anger type energy, what that does is it creates a little bit of space between you and the emotion.
It's beautiful.
So there's back to the space, space between the notes. There's the space between you and the emotion. So, but then you can take it and you can say, well, actually, you know what? This is not my house. It's the house I live in. Mm-hmm. It's not my car. It's the car I drive. This is not my jacket. It's the jacket I wear. Oh, from legal viewpoint, sure, that might be my car, that might be your house.
But you're energetically detaching in the choice of words and language, which associated energy will follow.
Spiritual viewpoint. There's legal viewpoint that have to be practical.
Yes.
Okay, so that's practical. Own your car, own your shirt. Yes, it's my jacket, it's my shirt. But at some point, me and this jacket part ways.
Of course.
Hopefully the jacket goes first.
Hopefully.
You never know.
Hopefully.
So you create space, because from spiritual viewpoint, you don't own anything. You don't even own your body. Right. So then we can take it another step. It's not my body. It's the body I live in. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, if I'm going to live in this body, let's take good care. I only get one, at least one for now, one that I remember. Past and future lives, that's a whole other conversation. Yeah. That's for another day. But let's take good care of this, and let's be very nice to this body. I told this story this morning in the ELF coaching call. Years ago, I had a woman, she was entering one of the Zen wellness programs, late 50s, and she says, I have a bad knee. I said, really? She said, yeah, it's a bad knee. I said, did it talk back? Did it misbehave? Did it stay out late at night? Did it like swear and cuss at you? Like what did it do that it's so bad? And, she started laughing. It's like, oh, okay, well, I guess I have a hurt knee. Okay. That's different.
Yes, it is.
Or how about this? You have a stronger knee and you have a weaker knee. That's fair. That's a fact. But why would you judge your knee and call it bad?
Yeah.
Why would you say that? Are you standing? Mm-hmm. Well, guess what? There's some people that would be very happy to have a knee that could even have you stand. Mm-hmm. Why would it's like treating a toddler that way? Why would you call a toddler bad? No.
Yeah.
Be nice to your knee. Be precious. Let's strengthen. And if there's a physical issue and everything, okay, then let's strengthen everything. Let's get it as helpers. Yeah. Let's make everything else strong, and let's do it so that you can move around with mobility. Yeah. And we did, and she's moving around, to this day, she's doing it. But, I have a bad this, I have a bad that. Well, no, maybe just flip some of the language around.
Well, and what I appreciate is that even in the way that you talk about language, you talk about how imperfect it actually is because of our lack of actual infinite understanding. And so it's only our interpretation, perspective, and whatever access to the words that we have and our ability to communicate them, which is so beautiful. Yet, because we do have access to them, we can also be aware and intentional in the words that we choose. And I agree with you. That's one of the things I love to do with people, is to highlight where there's language that can shift even the energy that they're experiencing with. One of the most common things is the word should. Which is a shame-based word and automatically implies that whoever you are, whatever you're doing, you're not good enough. Yeah. And, I find that there's so much toxic shame that exists in our cultures these days that immediately give the layers that label good and bad. I am this, I am not this, that connect people to the energy. And on Hawkins' scale, if I'm remembering correctly, I think shame is like 20 and courage is like 200 and enlightenment's like 700.
Yeah.
From a frequency, is that accurate?
Yeah, around there.
And so one of the things that I often try to get people to understand is, again, when you're existing in that low frequency energy of shame, the shame and blame becomes almost impossible to escape. Yeah. Because even what you just said, the language of I am this, and I'll tell you, perfect example where I fell victim to it. I used to call this my accident. Literally, we call it my accident. Yeah, my accident.
Yeah.
It wasn't my accident. I was standing in the wrong place at the wrong time, potentially, or it was perfect. Yeah. And I got hit by a truck that was actually an accident from someone who missed a pedal. And it was the accident that changed the trajectory of my life and put a physical imprint in my arm. But what's interesting is the 30th anniversary of that accident was last August.
Wow.
And that was the first time that I actually made the shift in the language. And I also met the lady who saved my life the day of the 30th anniversary, 30 years later, within 2 hours. I'd never met her before. The reason I outline all that is like, I had to release the commitment and energy to even the ownership of the accident from what you just described. And I'd been searching for this woman for 10 years. And it was only about a week or two before the accident anniversary that I started to like shift my ownership of that, my relationship with pain in my own body. That's been a part of my journey, which I'm in a really good place in, by the way.
Yeah.
But I'm really curious your take on that, because you expanded on it, you describe it, but how will people be able to self-regulate the language that's committing them to a low frequency energy so they can raise their awareness and intention to it?
Okay. There's a lot there.
I know
that you just said. And what the powerful journey as a child, having a limb ripped from your body, and then the whole journey around that,
which I'm still on.
So it's like the tragedy, the darkest tragedy can get judo flipped, and how do you judo flip a tragedy? Very masterfully is how you do it. And so with that, you can create, sometimes you create greater highs with the greater lows.
I agree.
The only reason the Super Bowl works is because there's a built-in tragedy. Only reason it works. If everyone got
guaranteed losing team every time
participation trophies, it wouldn't work because there's some team that was so close, and so there's a storyline, and it winds up being tragic. But you need that tragedy to create
full contrast, full circle again. This is such a beautiful dialogue.
You have to have that. And so I would say, well, first of all, be nice to yourself. Okay, like when we talk about spiritual things and we talk about God and we talk about allowing and non-attachment, non-resistance and non-judgment and connecting into the Tao and connecting into grace, whatever language you want to use. Well, the other thing to remember is don't worry about being at one with the universe. You have death and all of eternity to be at one with the universe, so enjoy your separateness.
Never heard that before.
Yeah, enjoy it.
That's
because
beautiful.
There's things you're going to miss when you're dead.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to miss eating, sleeping, drinking, fucking, shitting, all like the body stuff.
Yeah,
you're gonna
all the physical elements.
And next time you even have anger type energy running through you, guess what? You're going to miss that when you're dead.
Yep.
So you might feel this rage energy. It's like, you know what? I am alive.
Yeah.
And at some point I'm not going to be alive. So even if you can flip that and enjoy that now. Yeah. Enjoy the separateness that we have from the universe, because the overused and word namaste. It's almost become parody.
Yeah,
namaste.
It does.
But at its core, the meaning is very profound. And here's the meaning of it. I have an ocean. I take one drop out of the ocean here. I take another drop out of the ocean here. And this one drop says, hey man, you're from the same ocean. Yeah, I am too. Wow, we're the same thing. Hey, look at you. We're actually kind of more same than different. Yeah, hey, namaste. Yeah, later, dude. I mean, that's what that means. And it means that we're both part of, and hey, guess what? The same divinity in me. Mm-hmm. I see that same divinity in you, mm-hmm. even though our shapes are different and our stories are different and maybe our beliefs are different. And maybe there's a part of us actually that hate each other. It's like, hey, let's get in a fist fight. Namaste.
Yeah. Well, and you kicked my ass for sure. So I don't know that I want to do that.
But that's what that word means. And because so enjoy your separateness, but when you can tap in and dial into, let's call it grace, we can use that word. We can say divinity. We can say the Tao. There's another word, the flow state. Yes, getting it. I did a course in virtual reality. I did what I believe is to be the first breathwork course in virtual reality. We called it the flow state. We go into all this and how to do it and how to do breathing, breath movement and intention in virtual reality. And ultimately to get yourself into that zone and into the flow state. But whatever word we use it, and however you get there, you get there. And so you had quite a journey, having a limb ripped from your body as a child, and innocently done. And I don't know all the details of your child, and it probably at some point you blamed yourself, and probably at some point maybe you got angry with God, or
there's a whole lot.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I went into mindset and mental toughness, created a mental narrative that protected me for 13 years.
Yeah.
And I accomplished a whole lot, but it also completely isolated me.
Yeah.
And then I'm going through a different experience where I almost lost my arm again after a snowboarding injury, and realized that the world bought into the power of my narrative. And I didn't have the courage and vulnerability to ask for help.
Yeah.
Right. And it was still beyond that, another 12 years later before I realized that I had shut off emotion.
Yeah.
I was focusing on vulnerability and authenticity for that next 13-year window because I believe that it's the glue that binds human connection.
Yeah.
But here was the missing variable that's giant. Human connection without emotion isn't human connection. It's just not. Because it's the energy, it's the frequency, it's the way that we connect, it's the depth, and so, for me, there's lots to process the story, but I'm still in it. I mean, I don't remember if I said this when you walked in, but at 31 years, I've had physical pain almost every day. I've been operating between a 7 and an 8 out of a scale of 10, probably for the last 5 years.
Entire body or just the arm?
Actually, not the arm at all.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, it's the ancillary effects of all the residual effects in my nervous system. And, a lot that I had to just kind of fix. And then my relationship with pain. I did have anger that was a result of pain. It was buried so deep, I could barely even see it. And the only 3 people that really got the damage and effect of it were my wife and kids, which were the only thing binary in my world, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
So I had to go deep and dig and do these things. So I gave you a quick download of it, but that's where my body is. What's interesting is I'm a week and 4 days right now with 0 pain.
Interesting.
And what's really interesting about it is that the first day of 0 pain was the day before I would have told you I was in the most amount of congruence I've ever been in my life in every way. And on the 4th of March, it happened. And I've been pain-free since. Now my routines and rhythms haven't changed. I'm staying consistent with the way I'm taking care of myself. I'm still doing all my stuff with my body, my mind, my heart. But I'll tell you that was the last piece of resistance for me that I'm still working on, because it's been 4 weeks after 31 years of patterning that I had this such conditioned belief that I was going to live and exist in and with pain for the rest of my life. And although I've been chasing and seeking pain-free and the divinity that exists in it, it was becoming, though I was getting closer and closer, it just started to feel like it was further and further away. And then it just happened. And so what I'm working through is my conditioned cellular belief that pain is necessary for me to do the things I want in my life. And I intellectually know that's wrong, and I don't agree with it. And I don't mean it right or wrong, but it's wrong to me. But the emotional and cellular piece of it is still connected to, like, when is the next shoe going to drop and pain will start. And I'm working on releasing that right now.
About 2,500 or so years ago, there was a group of people having a discussion about pain. And the leader of the discussion was Siddhartha. And he was asked, is pain necessary? And he said, absolutely, 100%, until you realize it's no longer necessary.
And I think that's where I'm at.
So is it necessary? Of course it's necessary. But at the same time, where there's no suffering, there's no enlightenment. So there has to be a struggle. There has to be the struggle of, like, the struggle of birth. The struggle of life, and there's a struggle of survival. When Jesus said, I'm going to paraphrase, look at those lilies, how they neither spin nor toil. He's saying, like, look, they're still, like, you clowns, you're sitting around, you're monkey minds. I'm paraphrasing.
Yeah, I got you.
But, like, look at them. That's not a suffering. They're not in resistance.
Yeah.
Neither the spinning nor the toiling. So is pain necessary? Absolutely. Until you realize it's no longer necessary. Now, is pain a part of life? Well, what if we did this? What if we reframed it? What if we reframed the word pain to sensation? We called it a sensation. When we call triggered, and this wasn't mine, it was actually Dr. Don Wood taught me this. He said, instead of using trigger, use the word activate. Like, oh, wow, that's so smart. I would never have thought of that. That activates. That's a little less emotionally charged. Yeah. So what if we looked at pain and we just called it a sensation? So that's a little less of a judgment. Now, you hit your head against a wall and you can say, hey, how's the sensation there? I mean, there's a reality. I mean, we do experience physical pain and things are going to happen. You can get a stomach ache and you can have
correct.
That's
and it's going to happen always.
Of course it's going to happen. That's part of the human condition is we're going to have a wide range of sensations. And on the two extremes, if we think of it as yin and yang, you have pain and pleasure, which are the two of the big human motivating factors, right here. But if we call it a sensation, it can take a little bit of the edge off, and it's not, I am in pain. Okay. And obviously there's truth to that. I have a sensation running through me. Because what we do in a lot of our, at the advanced level, what we do in our training programs in Zen Wellness is we do some intense physical training. And part of the intense physical training, you're going to experience a sensation. And can you hold the sensation and hold it while your body, it's heat and pressure. Transformation comes through heat and pressure.
Yeah.
Okay, a coal doesn't turn into a diamond just by hanging out and being a coal. A coal has to go through intense heat and pressure. And like we all have to go through, if we're going to have some type of transformation, look, there's heat and pressure. Yeah. I mean, and there's going to be and there's going to be plenty of pain. Whether the pain is, pain coming at you or doing things in your like to create your own heat and pressure. That's just the human condition. And so you go through that, and then it's holding your mind. And even the breath mastery training that I do, we can call it pain. We could call it activating the lizard brain, where you actually activate that fight or flight part. Yep. And when you have the lizard brain screaming at you, can you stay centered and stay calm? And stay calm. And almost think of the lizard brain as just a child, and it's okay. No, lizard brain, if you're going to yell and scream, and that's okay. My lizard brain yells and screams. It's not going to not yell and scream. It's like we say, there's the monkey mind, which is the thoughts, and we have that which observes the thoughts. So we have the word human being. There's the human part, there's the being part. Yep. The being part is the same from when you and I were 7. The human part is very different than from when you and I were 7 years old. So can you activate the being? We do this in meditation. The being watches the thoughts. Yep. And when you watch the thoughts, there's a detachment and there's a thought. Someone says, oh, I had the most horrible, evil thoughts. I'm such a bad person. No. Well, maybe if you act on them, maybe we can make a judgment. But to have crazy, insane thoughts, everyone has crazy, dark, insane thoughts. You have to have crazy, dark, insane thoughts. So if you're listening to this, it's okay. Yeah. If you have just behavior, maybe not okay, right. but thoughts, and just you because you're not your thoughts. Yeah. So pain, sensation, but is pain your best friend or is pain your worst enemy? It depends on.
Yeah, it's all perspective, right?
Yeah, and what you make of it.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is I've also always believed that pain is independent. Like it can't be measured independent of the person experiencing.
That's so true,
right? And so the only thing universal about it is that it's a universal human experience. It's part of the human condition, as you said. Yeah. And so again, there's so many layers that come full circle in all of your answers and the way that you show up. I want to shift because I really do want to talk on something. You and I could talk for hours. I can feel it already. I love the way that you communicate. You referenced it before. You bought a town. You're now an owner of a ghost town, right? Yeah. Like, what's the future vision of that? And like, as sheriff, because I know you're the sheriff of the town too. Have you met all 8 of the population so far? And
absolutely. I was just up there yesterday.
It's amazing. Yeah. So tell us about this and where is it? Where is it going?
Okay. So we even back up. This was about maybe a year and a half ago or so. I saw a news story that a town was for sale. I didn't even know you could buy a town.
I didn't either.
Okay, I sent it the link and I sent it to Joe Polish as a joke. Hey, want to buy a town? Ha ha ha! It was a joke. I didn't want to buy a town. He texts me right back. Well, maybe. Like, what?
Now you're like, wait, what?
Nah, I'm going to buy a town. What am I going to do a town? I'm completely unqualified to buy a town. What? Well, 6 months later, we bought the town. And with a few other, Ben Hootie, Michael Leone, so the four of us bought the ghost town. And really, I mean, we were sitting around the table and with all these ideas, different ideas that we can do with the town, but then we had to determine, okay, do we want to acquire the asset? Yes or no? There was like the clarity moment. Ben Hootie is really good at that. He's brilliant at real estate. And it was just very clear. Do we acquire it? Yes or no? And we went around the table and it was yes, yes, yes. So then only thing that matters is, okay, now let's acquire the asset. Then we'll figure out everything else afterwards. So this is kind of, it's a good entrepreneurial like exercise about just being very clear. Is it a hell yes or a no? There's that saying. And then if it's a yes, you do it and then you figure out everything else afterwards. So we acquired the asset without a clear plan, being completely unqualified to do it. And Joe Polish put together a website called whatsyourcleater.com. And we use that as a metaphor for doing something far outside your comfort zone.
Like
what's your cleater? Yeah. And so when we did this NFT launch and we brought all the NFT people to the town, you can become a citizen of Cleater, and that's still evolving. And we did this whole drill on what's your Cleater? Like what's something that's outside of your current skill set that you feel a calling for? Like what's something that you should say yes to, maybe that crosses through your desk that's very uncomfortable. It's not everything. Don't say yes to everything. You have to just discern, obviously. But what's your Cleater? So that's become a metaphor. And so we're doing a lot of different things. As my understanding, I think we're the first town to have an NFT. We're the first town to ever be in virtual reality. You can download, if you have a VR headset, download the app Retreat. And we have the Cleater in there. That's where I'm the music director of that
so
company.
Amazing.
And we also have the flow state is in that. And so we're doing all types of stuff. We had our big first event, kind of like a Burning Man-ish type of event for building this giant art piece. An art piece fence out of old mining equipment because it was an old mining town from 100 years ago. There was an old schoolhouse. We cleared out the schoolhouse. We saw voting booths from the 40s. Oh my 1940s. Yeah. And like old telephone and old like school stuff. And it was like amazing, all this history that was there because it was an old mining town.
Yeah.
And like a lot of ghost towns, they were mining towns. And then when the gold dried up, then poof, and then the town's gone. So there was once a school, there was a railroad, there was a post office there. Now there's like a dozen or so residents. There's like a dozen places. So we're fixing it up. We're restoring it. There's still a bar there. So you can go to Cleater. You can Google it.
What? It's in Arizona?
Oh, yeah. It's about an hour from right here, from where we are right now.
North, south? Where's
North.
it? Oh,
it's on. Have you ever been to Crown King?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
You've passed through Cleater. It's that little ghost town.
Oh, awesome. That is so cool. That makes it even better that I know where you are. That is so cool.
Yeah.
That's an awesome story.
Yeah.
I love that an idea and a joke turned into kind of, for lack of a better term, a movement is what it sounds like. Because you're trying to show people what's possible outside of.
So here's the other part of it. So we say, okay, sheriff. There's 5 points in a badge.
Yeah.
We all understand the sheriff is the protector of persons and property.
Yep.
Okay, we all understand that. So that's, we have matter, energy, consciousness. That's the matter. Mm-hmm. But if we look at pain, well, sure, does pain come from being robbed? And you can have a gun, but if only we could use a firearm to shoot anger away, or to shoot emotional pain away, or what about mental turbidity? If only a firearm could do that. Well, unfortunately, it can't.
Yeah.
If it could, I'd be shooting things immediately all over the place.
No, right.
So we would need. So there's other things that you need. So the metaphor on one part of the badge is the star. The other part is the 5 elements: wood, fire, earth, metal, water, which is a metaphor for the ascension of matter, energy, and consciousness. Because so much pain is from emotional pain more than the physical
more often
pain. And you don't call the sheriff when you have anger type energy running through you.
No, you call the garbage man or you call Jason and figure out how to actually work through it.
Yeah. So that's kind of the metaphor. That's one of the things we're doing. We're doing.
I love that.
And we have another events coming out in the center. We're making it kind of as an event center. And that's what's another promoter.
Keep me involved, man. We're going to be close. I'd love to be involved if in any way.
You're an hour away.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's really cool.
Well, the other thing that I thought to myself is how many opportunities in one lifetime am I going to have to purchase a town 1 hour from my residence? I figured one at most.
One at most.
Usually the answer is 0.
Right.
So
that's why I'm like, it's amazing. I think it's such a cool little venture and a fun project to do with some friends.
It is. But to what we were saying before,
there
is a dark side.
Yeah.
There's snakes in the grass, both literal and metaphorical when doing this. And so it's easy to say, well, we just want to be careful. Oh, this entrepreneur project is so fun and great. Yeah, there's stuff. There's other stuff. There always is. And that's the reality of it.
So you are so deep in music, and it's amazing. I mean, even your ability to hear tune, frequency, rate, all of it that you were able to do when even you were just replicating some of that in front of us. You have extreme access to the creativity of notes, music, and expression through that way. How did you find music, or did music find you? And I'd like you to embed in your answer some of the really cool things that you have done with music and how you've integrated with organizations like Happy and sleep and intuition and insight and meditation apps and all the VR that you're doing, because you're really using music for healing in so many ways on so many platforms.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see if I give you the flyover, the short story. So I was fortunate because I was trained in the musical arts as a child.
Okay.
And for some reason, I just had good teacher karma. I grew up in Newton, Massachusetts, and I was just surrounded by art and artistry. And so I grew up around it. I went to Berklee Music of College in the 80s.
Oh, nice.
And so I went there. And so I did all my musical studies. I was able to tour Europe as a kid. And, I played in some of the great organs. I played the Notre Dame Cathedral organ, burnt down a few years ago. I was able to play that. So I had all this experience. And then from my teens also at the same time, I really got into the Zen training, all the sword and the medicine and the meditation and the yoga and the martial arts and the Qigong. And I got into all of that. And then in my mid-20s, I decided to make that my main focus. And so I took about 20 years off of writing music professionally to build an organization, build myself, raise a family, do all those mundane things. And then I didn't come back to music professionally until my mid-40s. But when I came back to it, I came back with a clarity of, okay, I know exactly what my purpose is in music. I'm going to take this old modality, I'm going to take the ancient wisdom teachings, and I'm going to translate them into sound. And I'm going to use them. Some of it was just practical, using it for our organization and for our meditation organization, and using some of it to do movement too. But that's what I'm going to do. And that's my purpose in the music. And one of the things I thought, it's like, okay, you get out of a profession for 20 years. You can think, okay, I actually kind of suck now. Everything has changed, and all technology changed. I mean, when I learned music editing, we had an X-Acto knife. When I learned composition, you had a piano, a piece of paper, and a pencil. There was no computer. There was none of that. So I had to retool and learn all the new tools. It's like, wow, I've been having a shovel. Now I have a John Deere. Wait a minute. What's going on here? So it's easy to think, okay, you get off of the wagon of a profession for 20 years. And it's like, wow, I'm an old man here. I really suck. However, what I realized, the 12 notes hadn't changed. They were the same. It was the same 12 notes. Like, oh, okay. And what the human condition hasn't changed. Technology changed. Oh, society's a turbid shit show now. It can't focus for more than 8 seconds. Sure. But the human condition is the same. The vibration of frequency that we call sound is still the same. The emotion is still the same. It was like, oh, okay. And that took me a little while to come to that conclusion. It's like, okay, so no, I get this. I just have to retool. I have to apply the craft of mastery to relearn, learn the new tools, learn the new software, and learn some of this new stuff. And then I had to master even sound engineering. I wasn't trained to that as a child, so I had to master that skill set and just learn a lot of it's technical. See, there's craftsmanship and then there's artistry. And if you're going to learn to paint, well, you've got to learn the primary colors. And you got to learn the brush stroke, and the lines go through the horizon. Entrepreneurialism. You got to know what's the front end, what's the back end. Well, what are my expenses? What are my sales? What's the lifetime customer acquisition? There's craftsmanship. I call that the monkey work. You got to learn the monkey work and be a good monkey and learn all this stuff. And then once you know some of the craftsmanship and you have that, then there's the artistry. I had a jazz piano player, and I don't play jazz anymore, but I did as a kid. when I was 16 years old, say to me, oh, Jason, he was this old guy, you know, always had a cigarette, most amazing player, true master of craft. He said, Jason, here's what you got to do. Learn every note, learn every scale, learn everything there is to know about music, learn everything that's ever been done with the 12 notes. Be able to play it forward, be able to play it backwards, be able to play it upside down, play it everything. And then once you have complete mastery of that, forget it all. I remember that's like, oh, okay. That took a while to do it, and then you forget it, and then it's just, then you are.
Yeah.
And then you are. So there's the artistry, and then the craftsmanship. And so I started my first project was just 9 albums. And it was like, okay, what am I going to do in these 9 albums? I am going to translate the 5 elements so that you can do the 5 elements. And I'm giving you the real short version of this. So the first 9, I knew I was going to do a cycle of 9. I was going to base it based on Beethoven's 9 symphonies. And it had to be 9 albums. And that's going to be done with 9 albums. And the 9th is going to be completely different than everything else, because you walk around an octagon 8 times, and the 9th is always up.
Yeah.
That's why we do 9 breaths. We do 108 breaths, which is 9 times 12. Yeah. We do 9 times. There's always 9, and there's a real spiritual reason for that. So I'm going to base all my albums based on this alchemy. And so I did it. The 9th album was actually my only album to date in English. So I actually wrote 5-element poetry. So I have one album that I did over 100 that was in English. And it was like, okay, I remember when it was done. I remember where I was. It's like, I'm finished. Like, once the master was done, I'm done. I did it. That's all I need to do. I don't have to do music anymore. I got that out of my system. I'm good. An hour later, a voice in my head said, score the I Ching. The I Ching is a very ancient wisdom teaching. Mm-hmm. It's an ancient, 6,000 years old. I said, what? I'm not going to score the I Ching. Score the I Ching. This is all in my head. I'm arguing with myself. I'm not going to score the I Ching. I know what it takes. I'm not doing it. No way. Score the I Ching. 100 albums later, now what the Zen Piano Project is a piano translation. That's what we were listening to on the way in, of those 8 trigrams. And so it's a language of symbols, and I just took the symbols and I translated it into the sound. And the hardest part about that was creating a Rosetta Stone. It took me 1 year to create a Rosetta Stone of here are the symbols and here are the sounds, and it's all on solo piano. And then there's other projects I do. I released a new opera album. I have another one coming out in 2 months. And the idea of new opera was to flip opera on its head. Because traditionally opera is an external drama that expands. So we said, let's look at your internal drama and dissolve it through deep listening. And then there's 2 albums. One is yin, one is yang, one is light and airy. The other one's thick and chunky, very, very percussive. I have a lo-fi album, Zen Lo-Fi, coming out in a few months. I do a new album the 4th Friday of every month. So you can just look me up and find a new one. So I wanted to take some more like kind of study music, Zen, like crackling of the album is in some of the lo-fi stuff.
So when you had such a gap, how were you expressing and releasing your creativity in that window of time, those 20 years that you...
Well, a lot of it was building an organization. I used the creativity and all the creativity and basically the Taoist arts and all the meditation. Mm-hmm. And so, because it's just another form of expression.
Right.
And it was like, okay, I'm the expression, or the sword is the expression, or there's the sword and the flute.
Yeah.
So there's an old metaphor with the sword and the flute, because you think the sword cuts and the flute sings, but at the highest level, actually, the flute cuts and the sword sings. You sing with the sword and you cut with the flute. And it's the dollop that we spoke about earlier. So the whole thing just judo flips. And then I teach this to entrepreneurs. We have a sword and a flute. And the sword is the metaphor. Well, when we're first born, we're met with the sword and the flute.
Yeah.
We're met with the flute represents breath. We take a breath outside the womb. The sword represents cutting.
Yep.
And the sword is the true birth. Remember, birth, death, birth, death, birth, death. So there's a death. From mom viewpoint, there's a death. Mom loses a body part called a baby. But you have to have that death, obviously, for the baby. So it's the birth. So we're met with the sword during the cut, and we're met with... So then as an entrepreneur, the question is, what in your life do you need to cut?
Yeah.
There's something. We all, maybe it's a thought process. Maybe it's a business. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's a client. Or maybe you're just so cool, all you need is a haircut. Yeah. Rarely is it that. Or I just have to cut my fingernails because my life's so perfect. Rarely.
Where do you still need to cut, and where does your lizard brain still take over?
Oh, my fingernails I need to cut. No, I'm just kidding. Boy, where am I cutting? Well, my great strength is my weakness. And lately I've been saying yes to a lot of projects.
Got it.
And I have multiple projects, and I'm actually personally, it's kind of a funny thing here, but I'm comfortable with some of the chaos of multiple projects, because there is definitely chaos. But when you dive into the now, okay, if I'm going to focus on this project, the only thing that exists is what I'm working on. Like yesterday, we spent all day in Cleater. It was really intense. Only thing that existed in my world was Cleater. I had nothing else in my world.
Yep.
Then I come back, and today I have other things in my world.
Which is life, right?
So when you can completely dial in to what you're doing it, and have some type of system or some type of team that can help. But what is it that I need to cut in my life? What is it? Well, I cut all social media. I did that a while ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't do social. I will admit I still read some of the news, probably more. I got rid of Twitter and I got rid of all that, but I got rid of all my news apps. I did that a while ago. So I like to keep up on some events as well. I don't want to be completely naive, but you hit a tipping point where knowing more isn't going to help you with your decision-making process and having more information. So what can I cut out? I can cut out some news, I think. After 50, I suggest to everybody, here's the bad news. If you're over 50 listening, for wellness, 4 hours a day. 4 hours a day. That does not mean hard physical training, running a decathlon 4 hours a day. It can mean walking the dog, or really the dog walks you, or walking, or doing some stretching, or getting a massage. That counts as well. Or sitting and being still, or reading an inspiring book or something like that. But if you want to stay well, it's 4 hours a day. Now, do I do 4 hours a day, 7 days a week? No. I don't, even though I tell everyone to do 4, but I'm very honest about it. No, some days I'll do 2 hours or something like that, because I'll do 2 30-minute walks with the dog, and then I'll do my own training and my own breath mastery or something like that. And I guess that day I was a slacker if I did that. So that can even continue to expand. So would we say it cut or breathe? I don't know, whatever metaphor that we want to use. But there's always something. There's always like little, there's always course correcting. What's the metaphor when a plane flies? It's off course 98% of the time or something, but it still makes like little tiny course corrections.
Yeah, it's always in the adjustment. You've done a lot of work to remove the resistance, interference, get clear, bring yourself back to center. It's very obvious. You teach it at a high level. You've not just done the work internally, you've studied significantly from the universal truths that have been documented for thousands of years, right? I love the monkey brain and the lizard brain analogy, because the animal nature that you just immediately seat people in is beautiful. Where does your lizard brain still get in your way, and what are the moments that trigger you the most, or that you, I forget the word, that activate the most? I was like, shit. That activate you the most in the lizard brain. Still, given the level of clarity and enlightenment you have.
Well, it's always there. So it doesn't not go away. So here's what we want to say with the monkey mind. There's a saying, chain the monkey to the tree. Okay, but then I added to this saying, is that you have to know the monkey's a master locksmith. No matter what you do, that monkey is going to escape. And it's real easy this happens in the spiritual community. It's real easy to think you're super cool because you're meditating. For example, you meditate and you do it for a while, and then once you build a muscle, you can get good at it. And I'm not having any thoughts anymore. Wow, look at me, look how still I am. Well, you see how you just lost it. Yeah. No, actually, no, you're a turbid shit show. Mm-hmm. And so the monkey mind will do that. The monkey is the constable that committed the crime. Is who it is. And so it thinks it's searching for it, but really it's the one that's guilty. And so that's why, like a Zen riddle, we have Zen riddles, and a Zen riddle is not something you solve but dissolve. So it's something that can't be solved.
Right.
It's something that has to be dissolved. And so, the wisdom is not knowing. The wisdom is in remembering. And it's just remembering this. And do you forget? Of course. And do I forget? Of course. forget. And then it says, what you said something really profound. It went from months
and years to minutes and moments. Yeah.
Yeah. Minutes and moments. And then how quickly can you come back and just come back to center? And it always happens in the now. It's always you, you're always here, and it's always now.
Yeah. I really appreciate you coming in and sitting down with me today. I really honestly absorbed a lot, received a lot from you. Your presence, your ability to be here with me right now was profound. It was incredible. I would love it if you would leave us with a closing thought. And if there's any place you want people to be able to find you, we'll put it in the show notes, but make sure if there's anything or resource that you believe is most relevant, that they can know what it is. But I really would love you to wrap a closing thought and kind of channel it based on your wisdom of even the interaction we've had today.
Well, let me do that in two parts. So let me start with, basically where to find
Beautiful.
us.
Knock the easy one out first.
Yeah, so find some of our stuff. If you go to zenpiano.com, you can find some of the things I do. I do a new album the fourth Friday of every month. So I would suggest if you want to dial into some of the music, find the latest album, whatever the latest album is, and listen to, see if you can dial into the space. Put on headphones is best, and there's always some type of silence there, and see if you can, don't listen to any of the notes, listen to some of the space in between the notes. Now, what you'll also find is these different programs we have, Master's Path and Zen Wellness, and we do stuff up on a mountain. We didn't even say we own a ranch, a 400-acre ranch that we do. We go up to the mountain and we do all this. We do this training, and breath mastery. I do for entrepreneurs, but we don't advertise anything. So we don't have any advertising. You won't find anything online. You won't find any social.
Which is why I want everybody to know where to go to find you, because they can find you based on a Google search. Probably.
That's right. So if you, and we do that on purpose. First, I don't want my brain all turbid with all the social media, and then come and find us. You have to do a little bit of work to find us. Go find us. And so you can go onto the site, and there's a ways to contact us that you want some of the information, and we'll have one of our people reach out and see if it's a match and see if it's a fit. So it's going to jump through a few hoops.
Yep.
To
they'll have skin in the game by the time they get to you, though.
Yeah, that's right. Well, there's going to traditionally, you go up the mountain to see the wise man, right? Maybe even not so wise at the top of the mountain, but it's not about the person on the top of the mountain. It's about having to get there. And that's why historically the sages tend to find God on the top of a mountain and not after going up an escalator or an elevator. Why? Does God exist on the 34th floor of a skyscraper? Of course, back to the fish to water analogy. Looking for God's like a fish looking for water. But when you go up the mountain, it's not like God exists on the mountain and not on the bottom of the mountain, but you change by going up and you get ready for it and you clean out all the crap in your body and you go through this whole journey. And then you're ready to receive. Back to the student ready, teacher appears. Teacher takes many forms. Teacher doesn't always take the form of a textbook,
right?
Or even a podcast.
It could be your kid. It could be your animal. It could be tripping on a rock.
Could be, right.
I mean, truly.
Because it's more about you than the teacher.
And the lessons.
What do you need to open up, and what do you need to be ready to learn? And so let's make the final point of how do you get to infinity? Like, how do you get to, if we're going to look from a creative viewpoint, there's something in your life that could use a creative solution, no matter what that is. So how do you get to the place of creativity where everything exists? Go to the place where nothing exists.
Yeah.
And that's my little, let's say, secret or trick or technique with music. I call it the music store, where everything exists. And I just go there and then I look around and I just pick something cool and I come back out and I get it. But how do you get to that store? By going to the place of nothing.
Yeah.
You just sit for nothing. And then I'll sit at the piano and I'll just wait. And guaranteed to work. Have you heard the saying, the rain dances, the Native American rain dance? Mm-hmm. There's an old saying, rain dance always works 100% of the time, guaranteed. Why? Dance till it rains.
The simplicity.
So this technique works 100% of the time.
Yeah.
Wait until it shows up.
Though, honestly, that's the truth. I mean, every time I have to sit down and do something creative, if I have to write something, if I'm wanting to release something, if I am preparing a talk, if I like anything that's like a different expression. And then I've been asked often, well, how do you channel? Like, how do you surrender in the moment and just channel whatever needs to be said? And truly, it's all about going to the exact same point we open the show with and the exact same point we're closing the show with.
Yeah.
It's about the present, and it's about the space between the notes. And, you gave 50 different analogies on what that looks like, but the lesson was so consistent today.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here with us.
And let that be the final, to answer your question, the final listen is even right now, don't listen to my words, don't listen to Brian's words. Dial your attention into the gap. And when you do that, the thinking drops.
And that's when you become the observer and participant in your life real time simultaneously.
You got it.
It's pretty beautiful. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
For those of you that watched, I'm not even going to say much more. It's very simple. It's between the notes. The gift is in the gray area. What are you doing to allow your monkey brain and your lizard brain to not only live the creatures that they are, but to be contained in the moments that you need to see yourself more clearly? How do you center yourself in minutes and moments versus months and years? It all comes back to the same point. It's about you being here right now. But to get to the place of presence, it requires you to flip open your lid and scan your can.
What you can probably tell by now is that I love telling these stories, but what I love even more is the impact that's coming from them. You see, we're on a mission to impact over 1 billion lives as quickly as possible, but to do that, we need you. See, we believe that moved people move people. And so all I'm asking is if you've resonated, connected with any of the messaging, please consider commenting, sharing, leave a rating and review. Thank you so much for tuning into Flipping the Lid. And if you want more information on the show, how to become a guest, how to recommend a guest, or any of the other details, head over to flippingthelid.com. We'll see you there.